Hello, my name is Lisa. In this video, I'll be discussing decimals and percents. If you turn to your workbook, page number 15, section 1.6, you will notice at the top of the page it says let's make a place value chart to refer to the number 10,897,543.123456. When we talk about decimals and percents, it's important with our decimal numbers to know the place value of all of the digits represented. For one thing, it allows us to read those numbers, as I just did, and the other is allows us to recognize which decimal places are which. So when we start off, the number 1, if you look at the chart in your book, is 10 millions. And then we have the millions. Okay. In each group of 3 numbers, we separate these by commas. And in each group, you have hundreds, tens, and then the actual units. So if we look, we have 10 millions and millions because we only had 2 numbers there. If we had had another number to the left, we would have had 100 millions, 10 millions, millions. We have 100,000s, 10,000s, thousands, and then we have hundreds, tens, and ones. To the right of the decimal place, we count in the opposite direction. We have tenths, hundredths, thousands, and then 10,000ths should say in the book, number 5 is labeled as 10,000s. It should say 100,000s. And all of these have the TH on the end, THS, that tells us that we are to the right of the decimal place. And after that comes millions. Then we would have 10 millions, 100 millions, and so on. So in our first example, we're going to use those labels that we just found, and we're going to label the place values in the number 3.25. 3 is in the ones place. Then when we have 0.2, the first decimal to the right is always the tenths, and then we have the hundredths. And in our next example, we're given the number 3456. So if we put a comma in here, 0.89701, it says identify the digit in the hundredths. Hundredths should have a D in there, hundredths place. But because we have that THS, it tells us the ones to the right of the decimal place. And again, we would have tenths and then hundredths. And so 9 is the decimal in the hundredths decimal place. Now, when we want to convert a decimal to a fraction, we're going to rewrite the digits with no decimal point. This will become the numerator for our fraction. The denominator is the power of 10 that represents the place value of the decimal that we've been given. Example 1, 0.752. So step 1, we're going to write this as 752, the number with no decimal points. That's our numerator, so we need our fraction bar, and the denominator tells us the place value of our decimal. Well, again, we had tenths, hundredths. This is the thousandths decimal place, so we're going to make our denominator 1,000. Let's look at example 2. Example 2 says we have 25.98. Again, we're going to rewrite this with no decimal point, 2598, our fraction bar, and in the denominator we have to identify now which decimal place did we go out to. This was the hundredths, right? Tenths, then hundredths, so we're going to make 100 our denominator. And that's how you convert a decimal into a fraction. We're going to talk about multiplying and dividing decimals. Whenever you have arithmetic operations, adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing decimals, you may go ahead and use your calculator for these. However, when we're multiplying and dividing by powers of 10, it's really easy to do it without the calculator. 52.589 times 100. We're multiplying by a number bigger than 1. Our number is going to get bigger. We're going to move the decimal place to the right. 100 has 2 zeros. We're going to move that decimal place to make our number bigger by 2 decimal places. 52.589 is the same as 5,258.9. 0.25 times 10,000. Again, we count the number of zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to move the decimal. It's 0.25. We're going to move it 4 places to the right. 1, 2 means I have to add a 0 for the 3rd place and add a 0 for the 4th place. This gives me 2500. That's where our decimal point would be. To divide, remember when we divide things, we're always making them smaller. So we're going to move the decimal point to the left as many as the number of places of zeros that we have. Here we've written our division problems with a fraction bar, but again, we're going to count 1, 2, 3 zeros. So we're going to have to move that decimal 1, 2, 3 places. We need a 0 there. This is 0.052589. The decimal is 3 places to the left of where it began. 0.25 divided by 100. We have 2 zeros here. We have to move the decimal place 2 zeros to the left. So 0.0025 is how we divide by 100, moving the decimal left by 2 places. I know you've all talked about rounding in high school, but I still find students making mistakes when they round. When you're rounding a decimal, look at the digit to the right of the place value you want to keep. You will round up if the digit is a number 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. You add 1 to the place value you are keeping and eliminate all the rest of the digits to the right of it. You round down if the digit is a number between 0 and 4. Eliminate all digits to the right of the place value you are keeping, and you don't change the number that you're keeping. That place value digit stays the same. So, in the following examples, round to the nearest tenth and to the nearest hundredth. Okay, for the nearest tenth, there's the 10th decimal place, it's 7. So I'm going to look at the number to the right of it. I'm rounding up because it's between 5 and 9. So rounding up tells me that I need to add 1. 59.7, I have to add 1 to the digit I'm keeping, and I get 59.8. There's my answer, rounded to the 10th decimal place. To the 100th, let me do this in a different color. To the 100th decimal place, here's my 100th decimal place, so I have to look to the one left of it. It's between 0 and 4, which means I'm rounding down 59.75, and all I do is eliminate everything to the right of it. That 5 does not change. Let's look at another example. 62.83. If we're going to round to the 10th, there's my 10th decimal place. This is between 0 and 4, so I'm rounding down. Means I'm just going to keep 62.8, and I do nothing else to it. If I want to keep the 100th decimal place, I look at the one to the right of it. Again, it's 0 to 4, so I'm rounding down 62.83. I keep the 100th decimal place, as it was. One more example. If I want to round to the 10th, I keep the 9, I look at the 5. It's between 0 to 5, so I have to round up. That means 2.9. I add 1 to that 9, and what do I get? I get 0. I get 10, right? 1 plus 9 is 10, so I have to add the 1 over there. 1 plus 2 is 3. I get 3.0. When I write, because I was writing it to the 10th decimal place, I want to make sure that I keep the 0 there. That's an important part of my answer. Again, if we want to round to the 100th, we look at the digit to the left. Between 5 and 9, we're rounding up. So 2.95, I add 1 to the digit that I'm keeping, and this gives me 2.96. There's my number rounded up to the 100th decimal place. We talked about writing decimals as fractions. Now we're going to talk about writing fractions as decimals. Here's a place where we are going to use our calculators to divide on the calculator and then round to the nearest hundredth if necessary. So in example 1, it says we have 4/5. If I do 4 divided by 5 on my calculator, it tells me it's 0.8. Now, do I need to round to the nearest hundredth? No, because this is already a relatively nice number. I get 0.8. Now in your science classes, your scientists are always going to fuss at you to keep that leading 0 there. It just denotes that that decimal place isn't just a speck on the paper, you know, a random dirty mark, that it is a decimal place. Let's look at example 2. In example 2, we have 7/11. Again, if I take my calculator and I do 7 divided by 11, here's what I get. I get 0.636363. So this number does have decimal places. The direction said round to the nearest hundredth. Here's my hundredth decimal place. I look to the digit next to it. It's a 6. So I round up. I get 0.64 when I round up. There's another thing to note on this one. This is what we call a repeating decimal. The only reason that that last digit is a 4 instead of a 3 is because the calculator rounded up when it got to the end of its space that it had to write. But this is a repeating decimal, and we can write it with bar notation. Think about what repeats. We really have 0.6363636363. We can put a bar over the 6 and the 3 to say that's what it looks like as a repeating decimal. Now, what does percent mean? Percent, or the percent symbol, means that we're dividing by 100. If we want to convert percents to decimals, we're going to use that definition of percent and change the percent sign to divide by 100. So 5% really means 5 divided by 100. If you do that on your calculator, 5 divided by 100, your calculator will tell you it's 0.05. Okay, so our answer is 0.05. In example 2, it says 10%. If I do 10 divided by 100 on my calculator, I will get 0.1. Okay, so there is the percent written as a decimal. Now, if you note on these, what we've done is we're dividing by 100. When you divide by 100, it means you can move the decimal point 2 places to the left. Is that what we've done here? Yes. Think about 10%. It really means 10.0. We moved it past the 0, past the 1, and there was our new decimal point. Okay, so 0.1. Now we're going to talk about going in the opposite direction. When you convert a decimal to a percent, you're going to multiply the decimal by 100%. 17.5 is the same as saying I have 17.5 times 100%. If I do this part on the calculator, or if I think about multiplying by 100 means I'm moving the decimal 2 places to the right, I will have 1750, and now I need to keep the percent sign. There's my final answer. You multiply the numbers together and keep the percent sign. Let's look at example number 2, 0.52. Again, this is going to be 0.52 times 100%. I multiply the numbers together, means I'm moving the decimal right 2 places, and I get 52. Keep the percent sign. There's my answer written as a percent. Operations with decimals. When we add, subtract, multiply, or divide decimal numbers, you can use your calculator. So we have some examples here. And the only thing it tells you to do is to round your answers to 2 decimal places. So if I do 37.24 minus, now be careful on your calculators. Minus is one of these operation buttons along the left-hand side of the screen. If you're typing in a negative number, then you want that bottom key next to the decimal point. But this is for negative numbers, and this is for the operation of subtraction. So 37.24 minus 8.975. Here's my answer. I get 28.265. We said round to 2 decimal places. If we keep 2, we look at this one, it tells us to round up. Our answer is 28.27. All right, let's look at example 2 next. Example 2 says we have 65. Let me clear out my calculator. 65.74 divided by 3.75. When I get my answer, again, I need to round that to 2 decimal places. I want to keep 2. I look at the third one, I'm rounding down, so I get 17.53. And last example, move this down to where we can see the whole thing. And bring my calculator up clear. 9.02 times 54.71. I always make sure that you've typed it in correctly. We get our answer, and to round, keeping 2 decimal places, we look at the third one, a 4. That means we're rounding down. 493.48. And there's our final answer. You are now ready to go and do the homework for section 1.6, and we'll see you in a little bit.